All right, well, let's get to some more positive news here, and let's get into a Week 8 recap, which, again, in case you were not on planet Earth, yesterday, Niner faithful, that was a win for the 49ers, 33-22 over the Chicago Bears. Let's break down a little bit of what we saw. So breaking down the 49ers run game, do you see Elijah Mitchell continuing to progress as a runner within the 49ers offense?
I do 100%. I actually wrote something that was published this morning about how Elijah Mitchell and that running game sparked an offensive resurgence this week. I think even going back to that game in the monsoon against the Colts, they had a lot of success running the ball. And again, I'm a big guy in terms of draft evaluation stuff. So I watched a good amount of Elijah Mitchell before he was drafted by the Niners, and then I really ramped it up once they did get drafted by him. And you could see on the coach's film from his time at Louisiana that he was a fast guy. He wasn't afraid to go north to south. A lot of these guys who have that plus speed want to just get around guys. He wanted to run through guys. The first couple weeks of the season at the NFL level, I did think that he had some instances where he wasn't hitting the right gap. It appeared that he wasn't following the blocks that he was supposed to in the way that these runs were designed. But he had so much physical talent that a lot of that was being masked. Or it was just kind of overshadowed. So before the Colts game, I had said a couple times that I didn't think he had been, just fine or serviceable or whatever words we were using. I thought that he had struggled a little bit. He was 22nd in the league in rushing yards over expected at that point, which isn't terrible. But
below average.
Exactly, and especially when you consider the scheme and how well that the offensive line has been blocking in the run game.
Right.
He's now 8th 2 weeks later. So he's made a significant jump from 22nd to 8th in rushing yards over expected. And I think that matches up with what I've seen and many have probably seen with our own eyes over those last couple weeks. Yeah. And that's a big thing. I love citing data, but if you don't see with your own eyes what you see on these graphs and plots and lines and all that stuff, it doesn't matter. But I do think in Elijah Mitchell's case, it does match up very well. And these last 2 weeks, the Colts game and the Bears game, he has made that vast jump from a guy that was kind of, they didn't have anything really better at the time. He was, I guess you could argue, he was getting the job done, to now he's a guy that's not only taking them from a level of, baseline efficiency, he's putting them into a level of explosiveness that's in turn opening up the rest of the offense, giving them a little bit of flow and rhythm that we haven't seen. I thought by far the second half in Chicago was the best half of football that the offense had played all year. I thought it was better than the first half in Detroit. They averaged 9.7 yards per play in that second half, and they scored on every single drive except for the final drive where they took 3 knees in victory formation to end the game. So, I think Elijah Mitchell is taking strides. And again, he's a day 3 pick. He's a rookie. I'm not expecting him to go out there and be, Barry Sanders right off the bat. But I do think that it's encouraging to see that while he may have had some struggles early on, he is growing each week and getting better and better. And I think that that is huge for the 49ers because right now they don't really have anybody else they can rely on in the running back room. We saw for a couple weeks there, Kyle Juszczyk was getting a lot of snaps that would normally go to a running back, but now they have Jermichael Hasty back. They have Mitchell performing, and now Jeff Wilson Jr. will be coming back soon as well. So I expect the 49ers run game to continue to trend upwards. I don't know that they'll necessarily get back to that just dominating level we saw for a couple seasons, but I do think that they won't be in that kind of abysmal, between 2 and 3.5 yards a carry we saw for a good portion to start the season this year. I think they will get closer to that 4.5, 5 yards a carry we've grown accustomed to.
Ooh, that is good news for the 49ers. Yeah, it seems as if Kyle Shanahan and Bobby Turner have done it again, have found another late round gem, brought him in and just coached him up. Back-to-back 100-yard games from Elijah. Highest yards over expected per run, to your point of jumping forward by a wide margin on Sunday. He was around +3 for Sunday's game. As far as rushing leaders from yesterday, I found this to be a very amusing stat that I believe it was PFF put out there. But it was that the number 1 rusher was Elijah Mitchell with 137 yards. The number 2 rusher they put as Elijah Mitchell after contact, 135 yards. So all but 2 of his yards yesterday came after contact. And the next running back behind him was Najee Harris with 91 yards from scrimmage. Fields was in there with 103 yards, but obviously a quarterback, so they were limiting it to running backs. It is a fantastic statistical couple of games for Elijah Mitchell, but it begs the question for me, and I'm curious if you have an opinion on it. Why 0 from Sermon? It felt as if we saw some flashes, but now it is just complete abandonment, shift everything to Elijah. And I get that Elijah Mitchell is flashing greatness. You want to stick with the hot hand. I understand all of that. But in years past, it felt like much more of a balanced platoon attack from Shanahan in the use of his running backs to save fresh legs. Do you see anything concerning that warrants that lack of playing time by Sermon?
Admittedly, there's nothing that I can point to that is something that I've seen on tape from him in the limited reps he had in the preseason, the few he's had this season, in the regular season, and what I saw at training camp. I did not like the move at the time when they traded up for Trey Sermon.
Interesting.
Again, I did probably 1,000. I'm not even joking or exaggerating this number. I did probably close to 1,000 mock drafts over the course of early January till the time of the draft.
Nice.
Again, it's like my favorite time of the year. So I get very invested in a lot of guys who are still around that may not be household names, but are, around pick 80, 90, 100, whatever. And there was a lot of talent left on the board. So when they were trading up, I thought it was for a corner. I thought it was for an edge rusher, maybe. I cannot tell you how disappointed I was when I saw the pick come in and saw that it was Trey Sermon, running back, Ohio State. And that's not anything against him as a player. It's against my personal philosophy of getting value and extrapolating the amount of value you can in a given draft. And I just didn't like the pick in that spot. And again, it's not the player himself. It's just because, and this is part of it, is once you take a guy, while it's the third round for that position, that's still relatively high. And especially when Shanahan's shown us that he can get production from undrafted free agents like Raheem Mostert and Matt Breida, and he did the same thing with Alfred Morris. He's able to get these guys that aren't, household names coming out that are going to be super early round picks, and he's able to turn them into viable rushers. So now there's this expectation, well, hey, you took, I remember thinking to myself, like, hey, well, Kyle Shanahan must see something here he really likes. If him and Bobby Turner and these guys got together and they're like, we're going to take this guy in the third round, there has to be something there. And I will say the biggest thing to me that I liked about Trey Sermon was that he didn't really have, the blazing home run speed we've grown accustomed to, again, from guys like Mostert and Breida, and we're seeing from Mitchell now. But he had great balance through contact. He was a guy who I thought was really good about taking a gain that maybe only goes for 2 or 3 yards for most backs and turning it into 5 or 6. And I thought that, the 49ers had been lacking that in recent years. For a long time, I made the argument that I really liked Ezekiel Elliott because while he may not be this guy who's breaking these big runs, he's consistently getting 4, 5, 6, and that adds up over the course of a game. So I kind of envisioned a similar role for Sermon, if that makes sense, where he would be a guy that could run between the tackles, that could wear down a defense over the course of a game. He's not necessarily this big bruising back, but he definitely has some power behind him. He runs with a little bit of oomph that's there, he definitely has that kind of ability to, smack a defense and be difficult to tackle over the course of a game. So all signs kind of pointed to him being the bell cow and being the guy that's going to get that, larger portion of the carries. And I thought Mostert would probably, come in and be the guy that's going to rip off 8 or 9 carries a game and have that explosive ability. So now with Sermon getting absolutely nothing and Mitchell taking over, the optics are terrible because now you get fans sitting there saying, well, we got this guy in the 6th round, we traded up, we wasted this 3rd round pick, he's not seeing the field. And again, I always say, if you can hit on 50% of your picks, I don't really care where you take guys as long as they pan out. But I understand the optics from a fan's point of view where you're like, well, how did you miss this badly to the point where the guy can't even get on the field? So it's early. I don't want to make any judgments. He may finish the year really strong. He may come out next year and be a big part of what they have to do. I just have to, I apologize for going on a rant here, but I just have to add that I was against this from the beginning. So this doesn't surprise me in the slightest. And I think that the 49ers, had they taken Trey Sermon in the 7th round, nobody would be upset about this right now. They would be happy that they got Elijah Mitchell on day 3 and he's been successful. But when you take a guy in that spot, you make a trade up to get him, you're making a statement that this is our guy, we have a plan for him. And when you already missed pretty bad on Joe Williams the last time you took a running back
Yeah,
that high,
real bad.
it leaves a really bad taste in people's mouths. So I can totally understand the frustration from 49ers fans. I wish I could give you some sort of, piece of information that, this is why they're not playing him or this is why they're reluctant. I truthfully don't get it, and I'm just as confused as everyone else.
Yeah, it's odd to me. I also pictured him in the more of the Tevin Coleman role within this offense, between the tackles, being the bell cow of the offense. I thought that the statistics on him showed short area quickness. I like your description of his ability to run through contact, and that seemed to really fit how the 49ers might use him. It's just so strange to really abandon any carries at all. I'd be not as up in arms right now if there had been 3 carries, 4 carries. That would have fit my narrative. One hopes that you'll see all of these rookies start to contribute at some point.